you might have other thoughts about it. All right, so what we're going to also do here is set the properties for this TabBarController. So there's a UI IB outlet. Controller. Now, all right, so now the thing is that we did here is we did a retain, and every time we have to do a retain, we also have to do a release. So keep that in mind. So I just copied that, or copied the variable, at synthesize, paste. And every time you do a properties, you synthesize and you do the release in the dealloc method. I just pasted it and then release. Okay, now the other thing is that what I do, and again you might have different opinions about this, I like to line all these type of variables up so they becomes more readable. Okay, so now what we want to do is call a method on the Windows object to add a subview to the window. Okay, so add subview, and this requires now a notice that this requires a UI view object. Okay, so how do we create a UI view object? Well, the TabBarController can generate a view for you by calling the view method on it. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to create, call the root TabBarController and call the view method on it. That will return a UI view that you're going to add to the window, and then we're going to make Windows make key and visible. Now it turns out you can comment this out. It'll work both ways, and if you generate a default tab view control project using Xcode, it will not include this window make key invisible. So I'm wondering what is the best way to do this. I think it's probably better to keep that, because just as my guess. But again, you might have different opinions about it. All right, so what we're going to do is build this, Command B, and we have two errors. Semicolon. Yeah, it's not very forgiving to missing semicolons. All right, so we compiled, and now we're going to go back to. I'm going to close this. It's always good to open and close it. Go back to main.nib. And what I want to do now is connect the TabBarController with the IB outlet that we just created in the app delegate. Now notice that the app delegate now has a reference in its outlets as a root TabController, and because we did this, and in particular is because we did this plus the synthesize. Okay, and the synthesize and the properties also created the getters and setter methods, which is this is a getter method. It got the view of this TabBarController, and so sure enough, it is now available. Well, what do we connect this to? Well, this output is going to be connected to the TabBarController. Let's Command Q to quit and save, and let's just do build and go. What the heck? It's thinking. All right, it came up. And it's taking its sweet time. All right, so here's the Tab View Controller, which was instantiated and rendered. And but there's no views here. Why is that? Well, because we didn't define any views whatsoever. Okay, so of course we don't have any views. So let's work on that. So what are we going to do? Well, we want to generate a web page on when you hit the first tab and a map on the second tab. Okay, so there's no view here. It's empty. So what I want to do now is go to Data Views, and we're going to add a web view to the first tab. Now notice under the first view controller, there's the web view and the tab bar item, and there's nothing yet under the second one, so we'll go here and also add a map view to this bad boy right now. Okay, but there's nothing to connect to, and the controllers, there's no controller. It's just a generic UI view controller, but there's nothing defined here. So what are we going to assign this to? Well, that's the next step. We're going to go into classes, and we can create 2 new classes, 2 new view controllers for each one of those views. Now normally you could also just create 1 view controller to control both those views, but that I don't think would be a good adherence to the MVC model, or the model view controller that Apple emphasizes, and a lot of programmers think is a good program practice. So we're going to create for every view a view controller. All right, so we're going to create a new file, and we're going to select UI view controller. We're not going to include a zib here because it's fairly straightforward, and we're going to call this the web view controller. All right. Make sure that the .h is selected, and we're going to create another class called the map view controller. We could call it second view controller. You could call it whatever you like, but we're going to call it map view controller. Okay, sorry about that. We just ran out of memory, so I have to restart the video. But so we just created the map view. And so under classes, the one other thing we're going to do is a little bit of housekeeping. And this is something you don't have to do, but I like to do. I want to arrange these different view controllers in a way that reflects the UI schema that we have. So in the bottom, we have the app delegates, then we have the web, and then the map view. You don't have to do this, but you can also do this from bottom up or top down. I like to stack my views in a similar fashion than how you would stack a deck of cards. So assume you have your hand out and you put a playing card on your hand face up as a view, and then you can add other views on top of it, or then remove views. And so I like to arrange my UI controllers, view controllers, in this manner. All right, so again, that's just a personal preference, but you might have other thoughts about that. All right, now let's go back to the main zip file, and notice that the TabBarController, we have the 2 views here, and what we're going to do is we're going to now associate or tie those views to our views that we just created here. And the way you do that, you go to the first view controller, and you type in web view controller. Okay, same thing with the map view controller. Put in map view controller. All right, so now we have the web view and map view under their respective view controllers, but there's nothing that we can tie that to. So for example, in the connections, there's nothing we can tie the web view to any outlets. So we have to create those outlets, which we will do next. So what I'm going to do is Command Q, which saves and quits interface controller.